Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Nittai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Go.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Today we are very fortunate to have the association of His Grace Nrsimha Prabhu. His Grace Nrsimha Prabhu is a very senior devotee and staying in Melbourne, Australia, and also at Sridham Mayapur. He is having various responsibilities in ISKCON. Mainly, he is currently ISKCON Minister of deity worship and guiding many temples regarding deity worship, framing standards of deity worship. He shares his knowledge and understanding of deity worship with great enthusiasm. He spends much of the year in Mayapur with his family, and also we are very fortunate that he has visited Ujjain a couple of times. During GBC meeting also, he came to Ujjain and blessed us with his association. He stayed here for a couple of days after GBC meeting to guide us regarding deity worship, and so we are very fortunate to have the association of His Grace Nrsimha Prabhu at this most needed moment. let us express our gratitude to him by one time chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. His great blessing Kavaca Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.
So, yeah, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to speak about or glorify His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Bhakti Charu Maharaj was an extraordinary devotee, and everyone he met, he touched their lives, he touched their heart. I remember even years ago in Melbourne, he was visiting there, and my wife had never met him before, and so we went up and we met him in the room where he's staying, and just the soft, gentle way that he dealt with my wife and also with our son, left a very, very striking impression. Very, very solid impression. And anyone he ever spoke with, he was always just a very, very gentle person, very, very loving, caring. And as I was saying before, extraordinary devotee. Srila Prabhupada recognized this right from the beginning. Of course, you're all very aware of his history with the initiation. I think it was in end of 1976, probably, he received first and second together. Srila Prabhupada didn't usually do this. Then not long later, just a few months later, Srila Prabhupada awarded him sannyas. I believe it was the Gorpanim Festival in 1977. And obviously Srila Prabhupada recognized that Bhakti Charu Maharaj was not an ordinary person. Very much in the same way that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur recognized that Srila Prabhupada was also not an ordinary person. And at one point, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has said that in time, he will do everything. So we see this is actually the same for His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, that he accomplished so much in Srila Prabhupada's service. And myself and my personal experience in the ministry trying to achieve different things for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada, I know it takes sometimes a mammoth endeavor just to do the simplest of things. So when I look at these Vaishnavas, especially someone of the caliber of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, who has achieved so much in his service to Srila Prabhupada, it's obviously, it's obvious to me that he's been empowered. A little bit about Maharaj's qualities, at least the ones I observed. I'm sure there are many, many other qualities that you've all seen that I'm not mentioning here, but just trying to capture some of the things that I've seen. And one of the first things that really stands out in my mind with Maharaj is he's a cultured Vaishnava gentleman. Even you just hear him speaking Bengali. I spend a bit of time in West Bengal, and of course, you go out the front of the temple and you hear the shopkeepers and the rickshaw wallahs and people speaking Bengali, which you can recognize the words and stuff like that. But when you hear Bhakti Charu Maharaj speak Bengali, it's another language. It's not even the same. It doesn't even sound the same. And I was speaking. Some of you may know Ganga Prabhu from Mayapur. He's in Australia right now, and I was speaking with him the other day, and he speaks Bengali, and he was saying that, like, normally when he speaks with Maharaj, you can understand what he's saying, but when Maharaj is speaking with high-class people, he can't actually understand the Bengali he's speaking because it's a different type of, it's a very cultured Bengali. So he's, such a gentleman in the way he interacted with people, always very polite and considerate for other people's needs and their feelings, etc. Also, as many of you have probably experienced, the embodiment of humility. I remember years ago listening to a class where there was some devotees were expressing, some very deep hurt that they had experienced in Krishna consciousness, in particular related to the way that children had been mistreated in ISKCON, and just listening to Maharaj, the way he was giving them time, he was letting them speak, and he if I was in the same position, I probably would get upset with these devotees, but he tolerated it. You know, it's almost like they were, at one point, almost like they were attacking him, but he just tolerated it. And he really was compassionate, but also he was emoting with them. He was connecting with them at an emotional level, wherein they actually became satisfied. They became placated. They became, you know, peaceful as a result of his patience and gentle treatment, and also his humility. And you know, we can see in many dealings with Maharaj how he's humble, also very, very courageous. You know, it's not normal that you would see someone who's like a Vaishnava sannyasi or humble gentleman type person be very courageous. But we can see that when the I remember watching the video of when the New York temple was going through a bit of a crisis recently, and then Maharaj, in the middle of the Sunday program, he came into the temple room, he got to class, and he made an announcement. And I was thinking, wow, that was pretty bold to do that, because it was like, you know, it was almost like, to use an expression, it was like on enemy territory. Not that, you know, Ram Bhadraprabhu was the enemy, but it was like being on enemy territory. And he just like boldly sort of stood up and said, okay, this is the GBC resolution. This is what we're doing. And then he just like had a kirtan and then left. Just, wow, extraordinary. Yeah. And determination. He had such incredible determination to push on, not only in his own Krishna consciousness, but also in all the services that all the many services he rendered for Srila Prabhupada. And also, one thing that also stands out with me with Bhakti Charu Maharaj is the loving relationships with Vaishnavas. I was very fortunate to witness over the years his interactions with, especially Tamal Krishna Maharaj and Bhavananda Prabhu, whom he had particularly deep affection for. And you know, Tamal Krishna Maharaj and he would spend a lot of time together. I remember in you know, the first few years I was going to Vrindavan, I would regularly be serving at Tamal Krishna Maharaj's house and serving the prasad or going on prikram and things like that. The first year of the VIHE, then Bhakti Charu Maharaj was also there. And just seeing the loving way they were interacting. There was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, there was Giriraj Maharaj, there was Burijan Prabhu, and just the way all these senior Vaishnavas were interacting, and the sweetness of the way that Bhakti Charu Maharaj would be serving them and interacting with them. You know, even though he was their peer, still he would take this mood of servitude, so to shoot. You know? And also, like, you know, in everything he was doing, he would teach by his personal example. You know, in the way he'd look after guests, in the way he would feed devotees, in the way he would, you know, just deal with ordinary people. I've got a few stories I want to tell a little bit later on, which will help to demonstrate this you know, this character of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, how he just was always, you know, it's not like he was ever not being an ideal Vaishnava. He was always, you know, whatever he was doing, he was always, you know, acting in a way that would be pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. I think there's a saying in Christianity, I don't remember the detail of it, but it's basically on the lines of, it's not so much what you're doing in public that determines a person's character, but more what you're doing in private. And whenever you met Bhakti Charu Maharaj, whenever it was in his room or whatever, he was out on a walk or whatever, he was always, you know, demonstrating how to live our lives as a Vaishnava. And as we all know, he was the embodiment of Vaishnava etiquette. I remember years ago, I think it was actually the first year at the VIHG, first or second year, he taught that course on Vaishnava etiquette. And you know, I teach quite a lot, you know, every year I'm teaching many times and things like that. And sometimes the things that, you know, we get asked about in relation to deity worship and things like that, and especially, you know, Brahminical behavior, Brahminical standards, I have to, you know, honestly reflect to the students that actually I can't do these things because they're a little bit too difficult for me, a little bit too austere or whatever. But I see that in this seminar on Vaishnava etiquette and you know, developing my relationship with Bhakti Charu Maharaj over the years, I saw that he actually lives all these qualities, all these characters of a Vaishnava. And one thing that was particularly remarkable, I remember being at Bhaktivedanta Manor. This is when Shruti Dharma Prabhu was still alive. This was going back a few years, and I remember that you know, Maharaj had to go to the bathroom, and you know, a part of Brahminical culture is that after you go to the bathroom, you should wash your face, your hands, you rinse your mouth, and wash your feet. And Maharaj did that, and it was freezing cold. It was, you know, England's not a warm place, and so, but he still did that. And Shruti Dharma was quite taken back by that, and Maharaj just made the point. You know, you have to live by example. You can't just, you know, tell one thing and do something different, but actually we need to live by example. And this is one thing that particularly inspired me with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj was he practiced what he preached, basically, is the point I'm trying to make here. And I also see that he's a source of inspiration for thousands and thousands of present and future devotees. He's a friend to all. You know, he didn't see anyone as an enemy. He just tried to see the best in everyone, and also tried to bring out the best in everyone. Then a few other points I had there. He was actually a warrior, a tireless warrior for Srila Prabhupada. He was bold, he was brave. He would stand strong, and he'd stand firm against any opposition to Srila Prabhupada's movement or the GBC. You know, I remember when he was the chairman of the GBC, and we had the meetings in Ujjain, the midterm general meetings. Then there's a few, you know, quite contentious topics came up that year. Yet Maharaj he stood firmly, and his whole intention was just to try to do what was the best for ISKCON. What would Srila Prabhupada want us to do in this circumstance? This was always there in the background of his mind. What would Prabhupada want us to do? And for me, this was, and throughout the whole thing, even though there's some very, very contentious issues, I mean, I can't go into the detail of it because of the confidentiality concerns, but even though there were some very, very difficult issues, nonetheless, Maharaj kept his cool. He conducted himself as a perfect Vaishnava throughout, even though, you know, he was having to take a firm stance on various things. So that was also very, very impressive for me. Then if we look at some of the services that Bhakti Charu Maharaj has done over the years, of course, one of the first things he did was he was personally serving Srila Prabhupada, he was cooking for Srila Prabhupada, he was massaging Srila Prabhupada, and many, many lovely stories. I remember when actually the one year in Vrindavan that Maharaj taught cooking, Vaishnava cooking, which was quite an interesting experience for me because, you know, coming from the background I come from, cooking is not a very, you know, big thing. You know, like people aren't very good cooks in Australia. Of course, the devotees are something different. But he taught Vaishnava cooking. He told a few very interesting stories. And one story I remember that he told, which I thought was very interesting, was that Prabhupada had asked him to cook a preparation called butter chachari. So those of you from West Bengal will probably know that this essentially is a pot which has portals in it, and then you fill it up so the portals are covered with mustard oil, and you put in you know, half a dozen to maybe a dozen large red chilies. And so Prabhupada showed him how to cook it, and you cook it down until the mustard oil starts to sort of go like that, you know, so it spits, crackles a little bit. And so then Prabhupada said, okay, now I've shown you how to do it, I want you to do it the next day. And so Bhakti Charu Maharaj did it. And then, but he didn't put as many chilies in there because he thought the chilies would be too hot. So then he made the preparation, and Prabhupada said, so you cooked it like I asked you? He said, yes, Prabhupada, exactly like you showed me. And so then Prabhupada took the preparation, and then he said to Bhakti Charu Maharaj, he said, what are you trying to do? You're trying to kill me or something? And Maharaj was quizzical, and he was asking, what do you mean, Srila Prabhupada? And he said, you know, I showed you how many chilies to put in there, and you didn't put that many chilies in. He said, oh, Srila Prabhupada, I thought it would be too hot for you. so I didn't put in as many chilies. And then Srila Prabhupada explained that actually you need to put in that many chilies to help digest all the oil. So there was a few other stories, but that's the one that sort of stuck in my mind. And then, of course, he was cooking and serving Srila Prabhupada, especially in Prabhupada's last days. And that was a very, if you kind of listen to the recollections of any of those devotees who were there at that time, Tamal Krishna Goswami, of course, was there. Bhavananda Prabhu was there for some time. Burijan Prabhu was living in Vrindavan at the time. So any of those devotees who were there, you'll see that it was a very intimate time where devotees got to be very, very close with Srila Prabhupada. And as a result of that closeness, they learnt a lot about Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission. And Bhakti Charu Maharaj certainly learnt a lot of Srila Prabhupada's mood and the importance and the gravity of the mission. And we see that has come out in Maharaj's personal conduct, that he was so determined to see this movement succeed. Then, of course, after that, he was translating Srila Prabhupada's books into Bengali. I was listening to someone discuss this the other day, and they were talking about, I can't remember how many years it was, but it was quite a few years that Maharaj was translating Prabhupada's. And I kind of find it really interesting that Prabhupada had engaged one of his disciples to translate his English books into Srila Prabhupada's native language. It goes to show that Srila Prabhupada actually had a great deal of faith in Bhakti Charu Maharaj, because he was allowing him to translate his books into his native language. And my understanding is that the Bhakti Charu Maharaj would rise very, would work late at night till the early hours of the morning for many, many years. And this act in itself is enough to make Bhakti Charu Maharaj very, very dear to Srila Prabhupada. And of course, we know he is very dear to Srila Prabhupada. And then, he did the Abhay Charan videos, which was also quite an extraordinary portrayal of Srila Prabhupada's life. And I understand also that he managed to get these videos, the whole video series, played on one of the major TV channels in India, which in itself also is quite an achievement. So, and the actors, my understanding is some of the actors who were portraying were actually quite well known in India. So he went to great lengths to serve Prabhupada's mission, and we can see that he was willing to go to any effort. Even with the Abhay Charan videos, I remember when they had the sound studio set up in Calcutta, and then Babai was helping with that. And just like Maharaj funded everything, he raised all the funds for it. He just went to such endeavor to try to push on Srila Prabhupada's mission, but not just Prabhupada's mission, but also the glory of Srila Prabhupada and the great personality that Srila Prabhupada is, and how the impact that Srila Prabhupada has had on so many people's lives, etc. And also, by his exemplary behavior, he's sort of pushing on Prabhupada's mission, and this determination, that he's demonstrated in so many different ways. His whole life, actually, we can see with Bhakti Charu Maharaj, his whole life is an offering to his spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And for us, those of us who are left behind, we can take this as a great guiding light, if you like. This is if we really want to remember Maharaj, if we really want to honor his life, is to try to live the same way, is to offer our lives as an offering to our spiritual master, as an offering to Srila Prabhupada, as an offering to the whole Guru Parampara, and ultimately to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, just to give our lives in the service of the Lord. And there's that verse in the Chaitanya Charanamrita, which talks about the Pada Upakara, is this highest welfare activity is to give one's life for the service of humanity. And this is what Bhakti Charu Maharaj has done. His whole life was just dedicated to giving Krishna consciousness to others. Then, of course, I can see there now the Ujjain temple. All glories to the Vaishnavas in Ujjain. He built this fabulous temple in Ujjain. I've been there twice now, I think. And not only is it a beautiful temple, it was built in 10 months. And I remember, you know, it wasn't easy. There was a few difficulties that Maharaj had to overcome to get this temple built. But not only is it a very beautiful temple, but it is spotlessly clean. And everything there is done at the best possible standard for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. And the situation in Ujjain is also quite remarkable, because one thing I see with Bhakti Charu Maharaj is he is an embodiment of devotee care. He just cares for devotees. He genuinely cares, not just for devotees, but for everyone. But he really genuinely cares for people. And if you look at the example in ISKCON Ujjain, it's a shining example of devotee care. You have very nice guest houses there for visiting devotees. There's accommodation blocks for the grihastas. There's businesses there to help devotees maintain a livelihood. And you know, there's so many aspects of that project are just focusing on caring for devotees. And I had this realization there when I was visiting there the last time. And to me, there are so many aspects of that project in Ujjain that other projects in ISKCON could learn from and benefit from this shining example set by Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And we can see also that you know, he loved serving the Vaishnavas in whatever way he could. This was, I think, this was a very big element in his life, was serving the Vaishnavas, whether it was offering prasadam, arrange, you know, he sometimes personally cook himself, or he would have his disciples cook. Prema Manjari and so many others would cook. He'd arrange accommodation. Sometimes he'd even arrange accommodation in his own quarters. I remember one year my wife and I were in Mayapur. We didn't have anywhere to stay, so he arranged for us to stay in his own quarters there. And I remember, you know, when we were staying there, he would take care of each and every need. He would ask us anything we needed, anything he wanted, and he'd make sure it was there. And that reminds me of when we were in Ujjain also for the GBC meetings. It was like we were his personal guests. And every day he would come into the prasadam hall and just see that, is the prasadam okay? You're getting what you need? Because, you know, most of the devotees there are older and they have specific diets. And, you know, he would, when we got there, he would ask, is the accommodation okay? Is everything you need being taken care of? You know, and even there in Ujjain, he so often provides devotees with Ayurvedic care. So many projects around the world he was providing with financial support. In so many different ways he was caring for devotees and just trying to make it easy for them to carry out their service for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada. And I even remember last year, I think it was, the midterm general meeting was in Tirupati. And just a chance meeting, I was just, you know, walking to the terminal to get on the flight, and who should be sitting there, radiant as the sun, on one of those electric trolleys they have in the airport, but His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And so, you know, I sat down and we were talking for some time, and then we got on the plane. And Maharaj was traveling business class, and I also, you know, with my international ticket, they got me through business class somehow. But then he noticed there was a brahmachari who was traveling in economy. And he asked the aircrew what was the cost to upgrade the devotee, and they told him, and so he paid for that. And then later on, I asked Maharaj, I asked him why he did this, and he said he just didn't want the devotee to feel like he was being left out, or that he wasn't, you know, this, you know, somehow wasn't the same as us, or that, you know, Maharaj was thinking he was better or something. So I thought that was an extraordinary act of kindness, where he just, you know, out of his own pocket, you know, paid for this devotee to sit at the front of the airplane. So this was very nice. And we can see also that, you know, Maharaj was a loyal disciple who tirelessly glorified Srila Prabhupada and never wanted or expected any glory for himself. He would just go out of his way to glorify Srila Prabhupada, his teachings, etc. Untiring efforts. Also, another really important part of Maharaj's, how would you say, Maharaj's sort of persona, was his untiring efforts to unite ISKCON in the service of Srila Prabhupada. Because as we can see over the years, there's been so many different things, which is to be expected in the material world. It is the material world after all. But there's been so many different things have happened which have caused dissension and disturbance within ISKCON. And His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj was always diligently and tirelessly working to try to bring devotees together under the banner of ISKCON and under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada to work cooperatively to push on Krishna consciousness. And we can see that even his untimely departure is serving to unite ISKCON further as we all come together to glorify his remarkable achievements in service to his beloved spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. And I've been reading some of the different homages of devotees, to Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And one of the points that really stuck in my mind was, I don't know if you've had the chance to read Bhurijan Prabhu's poem to His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, but then he reflects on the cover of that book that Bhakti Charu Maharaj published called The Ocean of Mercy. And in the words of Bhurijan Prabhu, Bhakti Charu Maharaj is showing his heart. And we see this beautiful cover, very warm sort of colors, and Srila Prabhupada and this little boy are walking away from the observer. And the little boy, as far as it was revealed, is actually Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And then Bhurijan Prabhu had asked His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj if this was showing his heart. And then Bhakti Charu Maharaj, in a very humble, soft way, he said yes. And when I look at that and seeing that is His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, we can see how he's looking at his relationship with Srila Prabhupada and seeing himself as just, next to Srila Prabhupada as just a small child who's completely dependent upon Srila Prabhupada's mercy for everything. And if we can also take this position of seeing ourselves as completely dependent upon the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and completely dependent upon the mercy of our spiritual masters, then I think we'll find ourselves in a very, very safe position in Krishna consciousness, because we can never feel that we are competent or capable of overcoming the many challenges that we face in this material world. But if we take shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, Guru, and the Vaishnavas, then we're completely secure, we're completely safe. And just a few reflections on different experiences I had over the years with His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. My first trip was the first time I think I remember meeting him was he would often come to Australia when Bhavananda Prabhu came to Australia, and seeing the relationship between the two of them was quite extraordinary. Very, very deep, affectionate relationship, and this is something that was to me evident in all of his relationships. They weren't just official relationships, but there's a lot of deep affection there, and he really respected and cared for devotees. And so this was quite evident in his relationships. Then, like I said, the first time I went to Vrindavan, Maharaj was teaching Vaishnava cooking, he was teaching Vaishnava etiquette. He was always also participating in Tamal Krishna Maharaj's Nectar Devotion class. He was very much present there, and leading kirtans in the temple and attending the programs, etc., setting a wonderful example. Then I remember several years after that, I was visiting New Mayapur in France, and it was Balaram Planine. At the time, His Holiness was the GBC for France. I think he was one of the GBCs for France. And, as is kind of normal, I was expecting that, Maharaj would be giving class in the temple or leading kirtan or doing something that you would expect, prominent Vaishnava to be doing. Yet he wasn't giving class, and I went down into the basement. I can't remember why I went down there. It was quite a few years ago now. And I was surprised to find that he was down in the basement kitchen cooking the feast for all the devotees. And, there's these big pots, and Maharaj was there with the paddles and cooking. And, he was always ready to serve. He was always ready to serve the Vaishnavas. And it wasn't like any service was too big or any service was too small. He was willing to do anything for the pleasure of Vaishnavas. And then I remember I had been sent to, or requested to go to Bengal to arrange some deities for Nrsimha Swami. And so he actually had arranged for me to stay with Chaitanya Das and his wife Malini. And then they actually took me to the center of West Bengal to a place called Bankura to arrange these Neem Gornitai for His Holiness Nrsimha Swami. And then also he arranged for me regularly to stay with Chaitanya Das Prabhu. And I must say they were they'd taken up Maharaj's spirit so well, and they were just like, you know, in the same spirit, just always carefully serving the Vaishnavas, taking care of their every need. Very, very wonderful devotees. Then coming, you know, fast forwarding to a few years ago in Fiji, I remember one time His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj was taking prasadam with Bir Krishna Goswami and a few other devotees. And then towards the end of the meal, they were just, you know, Bir Krishna Maharaj and Bhakti Charu Maharaj were sitting around and having a chat. And then Bir Krishna Maharaj, he asked Bhakti Charu Maharaj to give the Bhagavatam class the next morning. And then just like a small child, like a small boy, in genuine humility, Maharaj protested. He said, "But what shall I speak about? I don't know what to say." And then Bir Krishna Maharaj, he responded, he said, "Maharaj, even if you read the phone book, it would sound eloquent." And just to see that, you know, that sweet exchange between the devotees was very, very inspiring for me, and actually really, really helped me to appreciate more and more about the sweetness of His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And this is the one word, whenever I think of Maharaj, the one word that comes to my mind the most is sweetness. He would have to be the sweetest devotee I think I've ever had the experience to associate with. So very, very wonderful Vaishnava, and you're all very blessed to have such a guiding light in His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And of course, we can see the greatness of Bhakti Charu Maharaj. It is proven. If you look at all the personalities that are sending homages, of course, all his godbrothers are writing homages, and you know, especially on the GBC, and offering appreciation for his wonderful service. But then we can see that the Chief Minister of West Bengal, Mamata Banerjee, has also written a nice homage to Bhakti Charu Maharaj. One of the previous heads of the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, Sri Jiya Swami, also has written a homage for His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Also, Badhyayana Maharaj from the Gaudiya Math has written a homage. So we can see he was, you know, loved and respected by so many different persons. So you all have a lot to be thankful for. We all, not you, we all have a lot to be thankful for, to have the opportunity to have associated with Maharaj. And also still we can associate with him through his lectures and you know, his various writings and things like that. There's videos there on YouTube. You know, ISKCON Desiratory, there's so many wonderful lectures there. I regularly download lectures from there and listen. Yeah, so there's much to be thankful there for, and much we can reflect on about Maharaj's wonderful character, and setting a very good example for all of us to follow, and for us to learn from and grow from. Then Prabhu would ask me also to just reflect a little bit on how to, I guess, digest this whole situation. Then, and immediately my thoughts go to the first canto of the Bhagavatam. There's two interesting sections there where Bhishma Dev and Kunti are explaining essentially the same point. And then Bhishma Dev is really quite a tragic scene. You know, he's lying there on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and his body is just completely pierced with arrows, and he's just lying there, you know, surrounded by all the great sages. And then Yudhisthira Maharaj and his brothers and Krishna, they arrive, and Bhishma was just reflecting on how, he said, how is it that even in you're the Pandavas, Yudhishthira Maharaj is the personification of religion, and so he's such a person of such great quality, the mighty archer Arjuna, the powerful Bhima, and the twins Nakula and Sahadev. How could these calamities happen to you? But most of all, you are the personal friend of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How could these things happen to you? And then he reflected. He said, actually, the will of the Lord. You cannot. He used the expression providence, but we can understand this to be the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He explains that it's not possible to understand how these things are happening. So in the same way, when great Vaishnavas depart, we just have to understand that this is the will of the Supreme Lord, and why he's doing it. It's difficult for us to understand. It's difficult to comprehend. But we should just take this as a, we should. I just feel it's a really good opportunity for us to reflect upon the qualities and the nature of the person, in this case, His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, and think of how would they want us to respond to such a situation? What kind of person would they want us to become as a result of this? How would they want us to grow and learn from this situation? Because everything that happens is the arrangement of Krishna, especially for devotees. There's a really interesting story. I'm not sure Srila Prabhupada tells this story, but the story is essentially that everything Krishna does is okay. And there was a king and his minister, and the minister was always explaining to the king how everything that Krishna does is okay. But the king, who I think was Akbar, wasn't accepting this, and so one day he was out, and I think the minister was Birbal, but I could be wrong. But please feel free to correct me. But anyhow, so one day, the king, he's there, he's sharpening his sword, and he actually, he slipped with his sword and he cut off his thumb. And then so the minister comes in, and the king says, "You see, Birbal, look at this. My thumb's cut off. You think this is okay?" And he said, "Yes, Your Majesty. Everything Krishna does is okay." And the king became very, very angry, and he said, "Birbal, you're just a nonsense," and he threw him in jail. And then so he went on a hunting trip, and then he got thrown from his horse. I'll try and tell a shortcut, but got thrown from his horse, and then he was captured by the worshippers of Kali. The worshippers of Kali, they took him, they washed him, they dressed him up, and they were going to sacrifice him to Kali. And then just as the priest had the wooden chopper up, and the king came to, and he saw what was going on, and he had his wooden chopper, he was about to cut off his head, and then he noticed that the king's thumb was missing. And so then they had to reject him. They couldn't sacrifice him, because apparently their ideal is that that everything should be the man animal, as we learned from the pastime of Jad Bharat, the man animal should be perfect, strong, perfect, pure. And so they couldn't offer because the thumb was missing. So then when the king went back to his kingdom, and he explained to Birbal what had happened, and Birbal said, "You see, Your Majesty, the king realized that actually, this is something special that's happened here." So he got Birbal out of the prison. He spoke to him, and Birbal was relating how, because his thumb was cut off, they couldn't offer him. So, if you hadn't cut yourself while you were sharpening your sword this morning, then you would have been sacrificed. But not only that, Your Majesty, if you hadn't have got angry with me and thrown me in jail, I would have been with you. And if they hadn't have sacrificed you, they would have sacrificed me. So we can see that everything that Krishna does is okay. So sometimes it's just difficult to understand. We can't understand. It's very difficult to digest and to accept the things that happen sometimes. But by applying good intelligence to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and this comes from regularly hearing the teachings of Krishna, and we see for these great Vaishnavas, you look at Queen Kunti, or you look at Bhishma, they're seeing so much calamity. They're experiencing so much calamity. But in these calamities, they take shelter of Krishna. Why? Because they are steeped in the philosophy. They have deep understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But not just on a philosophical external level, but they're actually deeply accepting the reality of Krishna, the reality of the life of Krishna consciousness, and they practice it in their lives. And by this practice of Krishna consciousness, as we have heard Srila Prabhupada regularly make the claim that the Guru lives in his instructions, and the follower of the instructions lives with the Guru. So by imbibing the instructions of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, by imbibing the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and by imbibing the teachings of the Shastra, then we're never separated from these great souls. Prabhupada would often say that, he never felt separate from his spiritual master. And the reason he never felt separate from his spiritual master is because he was always striving to live the instructions of his spiritual master. And this is really, from my view, this is really the only way forward for all of us, is to use this as a bit an impetus or an inspiration to deepen our practice, to deepen our dependence upon the process of Krishna consciousness, to deepen our dependence upon the Vaishnavas. These are very, very important elements. Is regularly hear the teachings of the Supreme Lord given in the Srimad Bhagavatam, given in the Bhagavad Gita, given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, regularly hearing from senior Vaishnavas, and also regularly hearing from Srila Prabhupada, regularly hearing from His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj. And of course, most importantly, and this was always demonstrated by His Holiness Bhakti Charu Maharaj, is to associate with the Vaishnavas in a loving mood. Because by this association, we gain great solace, we derive great satisfaction, and also we derive great inspiration to push on in our Krishna consciousness. So, Ramananda Roy, I think it was in his offering that Giridhari Maharaj wrote, he was pointing out this statement from Ramananda Roy in the 8th chapter of the Madhya Lila, where Lord Chaitanya was asking Ramananda Roy, what is the most unbearable pain in this world? And Ramananda replied, he said, apart from separation from the devotees, is everything else is bearable, but the separation of devotees is unbearable. So, yes, it's a very difficult situation that we're all in now, because a great soul has left, and we're all feeling this loss, this lacking of his association, but still we have the association of each other. So by the association of the Vaishnavas, we gain great solace, we gain great peace in this material world. So, and actually, the material world is a horrible place. It's a very, very difficult place. And this what's going on with this virus infection in the material world right now, people are really, really suffering. And they have no solace. And their only solace is take shelter of intoxication and illicit activities. But they never find satisfaction there. But we're so blessed in Krishna consciousness is we have the opportunity to take shelter of the process of Krishna consciousness, the supreme process of Krishna consciousness, which will deliver us back to the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all I can really do is just encourage you to continue the way you are and push on in Krishna consciousness. The Prabhupada's created this amazing international family. We have friends and loved ones all around the world. And this is Prabhupada's family. And of course, as we know, in any family, there's going to be difficulties, there's going to be times of great happiness, there's going to be times of great calamity. But we're here to support each other. So if we just take shelter of each other at this difficult time and just really work on cultivating these loving relationships, then we'll all just eventually become more peaceful in this situation and progress steadily back the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I thank you very much for patiently listening, and if there's any service I can offer you, then you please feel free to ask. Srila Prabhupada ki, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj ki, Go Premanandi.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Janat Banam. There is one question from one Mataji, Sugopi Radha Mataji. She is asking what can...
Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji. No, I'm Vyasdev Das Prabhuji.
So Saurabh told me I should leave time for questions at the end, so that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, there is one question, Prabhuji. Sugopi Radha Mataji
Any
says...
questions, comments, realizations, reflections?
Yes, Prabhuji, there is a question from Sugopi Radha Mataji. She is asking what can we do to continue that spirit of kindness and love in ISKCON.
I'm sorry, I had my microphone muted. I might have a speaker muted. Sorry, so can you repeat what you're saying?
Prabhuji, the question is, what can we do to continue that spirit of kindness and love in ISKCON, the spirit that Bhakti Charu Maharaj displayed?
It's kind of interesting because there's different ways of looking at this, and obviously the first thing that we need to do is to be able to appreciate where we are in Krishna consciousness and accept that, you know, that generally speaking, we as most devotees are doing the best they can to become Krishna conscious, and we're all struggling with our demons. We're all struggling with the material nature. You know, Krishna says, "Manasastani indriyani prakritistani kashati," that all living entities are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind. So I think this is the beginning of this appreciation, is just to try to appreciate what the individuals are dealing with and to be compassionate, to accept that, okay, that they're trying to be Krishna conscious, and what can I do in this situation to help their Krishna consciousness become a little bit easier for them. I think this is, you know, one of the things that I see that was very important in Maharaj's dealings with devotees, is he wanted to help people to you know, be more effective, to more able to execute Krishna consciousness without so much difficulty. Very much like I also saw the same spirit with His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. He also saw how devotees were struggling in this world and wanted to help. And this is the real mood of a Vaishnava, is they just want to help others to go forward. That this para dukkha dukkha, you know, when they see others suffering, they become sad, and they want to help them. They want to help them become better in Krishna consciousness, or more effectively practice Krishna consciousness.
Prabhuji, there was another question from Uttam Sloka Prabhu. He is asking that many of the devotees, they were aspiring from Maharaj for the second initiation, and Maharaj knew about them, like, you know, how they are progressing in their Krishna consciousness. So accordingly, Maharaj would have been decided. So now what will be the procedure for the devotees who are aspiring from Maharaj for the second initiation? What should they do? Like, what should the guidance for them?
Yeah, well, normally what you would do is like, you would take, at some point in the future, you would approach another Vaishnava for that. And you know, I think also, because we've seen this happen, you know, quite a lot in ISKCON over the years, where gurus have left or gurus have passed away and things like that, and you know, the initiation hasn't been complete. And often you'll find that the devotees who take on that role of the second, you know, giving a second initiation, or the Pancharatna Gayatri Diksha, they are sensitive to the fact that this devotee was, you know, who they took their first initiation from. So yeah, it's not really a big thing. It's just a formality, really, and it doesn't in any way impact upon your relationship with your initiating spiritual master, in this case, Srila Bhakti Charu Maharaj. Because also we see that when Srila Prabhupada left, there were quite a few devotees who had only taken first initiation from Srila Prabhupada and needed to get second initiation. So they just took from someone else, but they were still seen as Prabhupada's disciples.
So Prabhuji, that's the question we had. We are very much grateful and fortunate to have your association, Prabhuji, during this situation in ISKCON, like immediate, like sudden, like Maharaja's going had shocked to many of the devotees, and many were like thinking what should be the procedure now, like how should we go on with Krishna consciousness. But because devotees around the ISKCON, they are giving their association, and today you also gave the association, so we are like so much grateful to you, and we thank you for the same by chanting one Hare Krishna Maha Mantra by raising our hands. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you.
One thing we need to understand is like, in the material world, everything's temporary. Everything comes, everything goes. But our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with our spiritual master is eternal. It's not dependent upon this body. So we need to try to develop that broader kind of vision of the transcendental nature of the relationship, the transcendental nature of the self. And when we can see that, then it becomes a little easier. It doesn't mean it becomes easy. It becomes a little bit easier to deal with these situations. And that's we're all blessed in Krishna consciousness because we have that perspective, whereas other people don't have that perspective. Non-devotees don't have that perspective. When for them the body finishes, everything's finished. But in Krishna consciousness, we can understand the transcendental nature of the jiva and the transcendental nature of the relationship with the Guru and with Krishna. So, yeah. Be
Thank
strong.
you very much. Thank you very much. His Grace Nrsimha Kavaca Prabhu ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Samavek Bhaktivinoda ki.
Jai.
Jai Gopalamanandi.
Hare Hare.
Thank you.